who studied Antarctic ice. He started in the 1950s. He's a member of the Academy of Sciences. He's got the gold medal from the CNRS, French National Research Centres. He's received many awards. We have the producer, Richard Grandpierre, who produced this film, and which finishes the words, "Now you know what you're going to do," because Claude Lorius studied the climate and the effects of human activity on the climate. And what he says is irremediable. Mankind has influenced dangerously the climate. He's proved it throughout his life, taking samples from the deep Antarctic ice, continent covered with ice, where there are the traces of the climate 400,000 years ago. And so he's been able to prove this through out his work with polar expeditions. And so he was an explorer and adventurer, and Luc Jacquet goes back over the history of this very adventurous scientist in the heart of a continent, a climate which is totally inhuman, with temperatures which are sometimes down as low as minus 80 degrees, average is minus 50. So terrible conditions to work in. He's over 80 now, and he's one of the leading French scientists. He worked in Grenoble, and he went off on year-long expeditions to Antarctica. It took 10 years of his life. He spent 10 years of his life in all in the Antarctic, and Luc Jacquet, of course, he made a wonderful film called The March of the Emperors, with the penguins there, and Claude Lorius took him to the Antarctic to see where he'd worked. And so he's been saying for decades now, be careful, be careful. Be careful about the planet. It's a small planet, and I can see traces of your activity when I dig down, drill down into the ice in the heart of the Antarctic. And human activity, the fact of producing oil, coal. It's a serious threat to the climate. We know that now. And Claude Lorius is one of the first people to sound the alarm. So a wonderful message he's sending us on scientific research, the fight for knowledge, solidarity as well between different countries. Russians, the Americans, in the Cold War, in fact, they worked with him and his French team to enable them, under terrible conditions, to go and do his research. And it's Luc Jacquet who says what he did, tells about what Claude Lorius did. And he's a scientist and a filmmaker specialized in the Antarctic. I talked to you about the March of the Penguins. So he made The Fox and the Child as well. I might remind you a little bit of The Little Prince. Yes, he made that in 2007. 2013, he went to the Virgin Forest with another scientist, the Amazonian forests, Francis Allais, who was talking about the disappearance of the forests, and he showed the incredible intelligence of these forests. So Luc Jacquet there, who will be closing the festival with his documentary Ice and the Sky. So a bit of ice under the heat of Cannes, thanks to these two men. They're applauded by the photographers. So a great scientist, a major scientist, and the archive images that we have in this film are just outstanding. They're fascinating. We see the adventure of this man and his polar expeditions in areas which are terrifying, and you imagine the courage that this man must have had, and his thirst for knowledge. In the 1950s and 60s, when people were going away with, triumph, if you like, after the war years, and despite the Cold War, which there was, so despite the Cold War, there was source, nevertheless, for working together, cooperation. So there we are, Claude Lorius and Luc Jacquet, the director of Ice and the Sky. A few pictures of this film, and then we'll see them